Hello, I hope you guys are doing well. Guess what? This is going to be an obnoxiously long video lesson, but guess what? You're out of school Friday and Tuesday, so you get a 5-day weekend. So you know what? That means that you'll get over watching this video that's long. But this long video also includes all the videos that you would have to watch anyway to answer all the quiz questions. And yes, it's very great. Alright, so let's see. Sorry, I'm not there today. Had some stuff I got to take care of. So anyway, this is your video lesson for Wednesday, 1/12/2022. Earth Science, aka Geoscience. So thank you for putting your phones away and taking your earbuds out. Unless you are watching this with your earbuds on your Chromebook or watching this on your phone. You know nomophobia at the moment, okay? Alright, so the 411, need you guys to remember most assignments, for the most part now, are summative, which means they are all included in your grade. It's not like last semester. The cutoff date for the first part of quarter 3 is February the 4th. After that, no assignments from the previous to February 4th can be submitted for credit. So I was going to give those of you in periods 4 and 8 your ACT practice test on Friday, but now since we don't have school on Friday due to a staff shortage, who knows when that will happen. So anyway, today we're going to be looking at the impact our city has on the local water supply and its future scarcity. Alright, so this is an issue that you guys may not particularly care about right now. I know most of you say you want to move out of this area. However, if you want to have life laugh at you, you tell life your plans, okay? It doesn't always work out that way. So as long as you live in Las Vegas, this is going to be an issue that you are going to need to be aware of, all right? So let's get started. My first question for you, what would you do if you and your family, if Las Vegas ran out of water? Like, let's say tomorrow you woke up and you went to brush your teeth, you turned on the tap, faucet, and no water came out. And then your parent and or guardian or sibling or somebody was like, oh, guess what? The city ran out of water. They've been hiding it forever, but didn't tell us, or something happened and there's no water. What would you do? Sit there and think about that for a little bit. All right, that is our scenario that we're going through, because it can, has, does, and will happen in various cities in the world, okay? So, what has, can, and does happen, and what will most likely happen in the future if we do not change our ways as a species in regards to water. So we're going to watch this video about a city located in Africa that is on the verge of running out of water. They did at one point. I think now they're kind of recovering, but we'll see.
Cape Town is facing an unprecedented socio-ecological crisis. Never before in the history of the modern world has a whole city of this kind threatened to run out of water for its citizens completely.
Cape Town residents have been told not to use more than 50 litres of water a day.
That sounds like a lot. The water you use in your short morning shower is now literally all you have for the entire day in terms of daily bathroom routine. If it's yellow, let it mellow, and, well, here it's also if it's brown, let it mellow. Exactly. And for showering, the water goes into buckets and is used for something else. Hand washing is anyway out, and we're now in most bathrooms seeing hand sanitizers. Cape Town authorities are threatening to fine residents who exceed the daily usage allowance up to 10,000 rand.
I spoke to a girl from Kenya and she was saying to me, I heard in your country you use fresh water for your toilets, and she started laughing. I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, we do that. That makes no sense at all.
Last week our water was cut off by 11 a.m. So we've been forced to go to the Newland Spring to get water.
Last year in 2017 we had a third year of below normal rainfall that was unprecedented. It's hard to attribute specific events to climate change, but an increase in extreme events like droughts is what we are expecting from climate change.
A lot of the blame made by politicians is to the public, saying that they're wasteful of resources.
For us, it's a shame for a city to say it's a water crisis. because most of us, especially in the black townships, we get a lot of people that must fetch water 15 k's away from their houses. We've been living in the day zero for many years, you see.
I need water at home desperately because my mom, actually she's on the age where she wets herself. I must wash her twice. And then how am I going to survive?
It's very much worrying because we also rely on the tourists coming in and all that. How can we provide them with good quality hospitality and also good food when all of this is happening?
We got like 50 liters that we can use. There's also per day.
Definitely don't use as much water as back at home.
At the best of times, we should be saving water, and we don't. The solutions that are at hand are kind of engineering solutions. Desalination plants, which haven't yet been built. There is sufficient underground water in this region to help resolve the problem. The restrictions are not really geared to restrict the agricultural community, although that could happen in future. We probably will continue to consume South African wines.
Okay, so something you need to pay attention there. They're limited to about 50 liters of water a day, so that is about 13 gallons. So, think about that. If you can only use 13 gallons of water every day, the average shower, I think, by a person uses at least like 17 gallons of water for a 10-minute shower or something like that. So think about that. All the water used in one morning shower is your limit for the entire day for cooking, cleaning, laundry, going to the bathroom, all bathing, all that good stuff, and drinking. That's what you're limited to per day. All right. So that can, has, does, and will happen. All right. So we've taken a look at Cape Town, South Africa. They've been counting down to day 0 when they are officially turn off the taps. So let's watch a video about Las Vegas and running out of water.
I am Mr. Beats, and this is water. I love drinking it. In fact, I drink it every day, and you should too, since you need it to survive and stuff. But some places of the world don't have much water. You know, like in deserts. And yet, people still find a way to live in deserts, in some of the driest places on Earth. In fact, some of the largest cities in the world are smack dab in the middle of a giant desert. One such city is one of my favorite places to visit, Las Vegas. 2.2 million people live in the Las Vegas metropolitan area. Every day, these 2.2 million people all need to drink water, bathe in water, wash their stuff with water, water their plants and lawns, and even play in water. The average household in Vegas uses around 222 gallons of water per day. So that's 489 million gallons for everyone per day. That's a lot of water needed in a city that gets just over 4 inches or 10 centimeters of rain each year. And recently, the city suffered its longest drought on record, a period of 116 straight days without rain. So where the heck does Las Vegas get its water? How can all of this continue to exist, especially something like this, and one of the driest places on Earth? Well, most of the water Las Vegas gets originated here, the Colorado River, a river that supplies water for, you know, just 7 states in the country? No, I'm not joshing you. That one river is the lifeblood of these 7 states. Because they all rely on the same river, they all signed an agreement called the Colorado River Compact, and it divided up the water from the river in this way. This agreement gave 97 billion gallons of water per year for Nevada. At the time the agreement went into effect, 1928, this was way more water than Las Vegas needed. Heck, at the time the city had less than 5,000 people living there. In 1935, the U.S. government completed the Hoover Dam, which then created the largest reservoir in the United States, Lake Mead. Over the past few decades, however, Lake Mead has started to go dry due to the recent 20-year-long drought in the American Southwest and increased increased demand from Vegas. The lake hasn't reached full capacity since 1983 and is currently at about 40% capacity, meaning it's now technically the second largest reservoir in the United States after nearby Lake Powell. See that bathtub ring? That's how high the water used to be. Back in 2008, two researchers predicted Lake Mead would completely run out of water by 2021 if the drought continued and people in Vegas didn't dramatically cut back on water. Since 2008, Vegas residents have dramatically cut back on water, and the drought overall hasn't affected the area as badly. But the Southern Nevada Water Authority has lately looked to other possible sources for water just in case Lake Mead doesn't make it. For years, they have been trying to create a pipeline system to get groundwater from central and eastern Nevada to southern Nevada. However, they have faced sharp resistance to the proposed idea, and it doesn't look like that pipeline system is going to be happening anytime soon. So another option is taking water from the eastern United States and redirecting it to southern Nevada, probably from the Great Lakes. Imagine one long pipe directing water from the Great Lakes all the way to Las Vegas. Another option is to take water from California's shoreline. Now, that water is too salty to use, obviously, but by building a desalination plant or two or three, that seawater could be converted and shipped to Las Vegas for personal use. Obviously, those two plans would require massive amounts of energy and would be very, very expensive. For now, Las Vegas is making it work. To find out more about how Las Vegas is both conserving water and
Alright, so there were a few key points in that video that you needed to be familiar with for your quiz. So you can always rewatch it here, or you can rewatch it where I will paste it below.
Hi, Mr.
But where does Las Vegas get its water? What supply it gets it from? Which river? The Colorado River. So what supplies the Colorado River with water? Well, the Colorado River is mainly supplied by snowpack in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. So this is kind of a fun little map I found of the Colorado River, but the headwaters of the Colorado River are up in the Rocky Mountains in the state of Colorado. Every year when it snows, that snowpack, think of snowpack as a mass storage of fresh water, that as the summer comes along and it melts that snowpack, it supplies water to the headwaters of the Colorado River. Colorado River flows down. Remember, it supplies 7 different states with water. You get Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, California, Arizona, and New Mexico. And of course, Mexico actually gets some water from it too. But that is the main source of water at the start of the Colorado River, is the snowpack in the Rocky Mountains, okay? So what states rely on the Colorado River? Again, as we mentioned, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, California, Arizona, and New Mexico. And again, Mexico actually gets some water from the Colorado River. Colorado River. So you have 7 states. And think about how big the Los Angeles area is, how many people live in it, and they are getting water from the Colorado River. Then you also have Phoenix. Phoenix is a huge city. I think it's the 5th largest city in the United States now. And it also gets water from the Colorado River, and so does Tucson, and so does Las Vegas, and a few other cities. But think about all those people and the growing population. So you have a growing population of humans and less water being supplied, okay? So what happens when you have more humans being born and less water becoming available? Think about that for a little bit. What happens when you have, think about it this way, the more humans you have being born, and you have less and less water becoming available. So this is something that has happened in the past with various population of mammals. You have overpopulation, you have more animals, more mammals, and less resources, okay? So eventually they end up fighting over resources. It becomes survival of the fittest, and it is not pretty, and there are a lot of deaths and battles, okay? So this is the projected growth of the United States. I couldn't find a specific number just for the southwestern United States, but you see right now there's about 329 million, 330 million people in the United States. That is from the Census Bureau. Now, if you project that into the future, it says that population is expected to grow to 458 million by 2050. Okay? Now, that seems far away. That is roughly 29 years away. However, trust me, it will get here faster than you know. So, 458, I mean, that's a growth of over 100 million people. So, again, what do you guys think will most likely happen? As you have more and more humans, you're going to have more and more demand on water. However, as you guys know, the climate is currently getting warmer and you have less and less water being supplied, okay? So let's look at some scenarios like this that are playing part in the rest of the world, okay? What's currently happening in some other parts of the world in relation to this same scenario, okay?
An often overlooked aspect of climate change is water availability. As water becomes scarcer, people get more aggressive in protecting their water rights. In fact, the fight over who gets to use the world's water has been a long, ongoing battle. So who's fighting over water? Well, water is arguably the world's most important resource. Nearly all human activity, including commerce, transportation, sanitation, migration patterns, and survival, are intrinsically linked to water. Yet nearly 800 million people, or 11% of the global population, lacks access to clean drinking water. Part of this comes from the distinction between human rights, economic viability, conflicting laws, and environmental concerns. This means there is rarely a solution which satisfies all involved. According to one study, between 1950 and 2000, there were more than 1,800 international conflicts over water. This doesn't even include domestic or internal disputes. Generally, water disputes that deal with international commerce, like fishing or agriculture, are addressed by the World Trade Organization. They even have internal groups to deal with disputes. When it comes to domestic water management and resources, the UN steps in. However, they focus more on activism and education to prevent conflicts rather than solving existing ones. For example, in the Middle East, the UN runs a program to train water professionals to avoid future disagreements over how water is internationally allocated. In particular, the Middle East is one of the most severe water crisis zones. It's been said that future wars in the Middle East are more likely to be fought over water than over oil. With only 1% of the world's fresh water available to about 5% of the global population, disputes over river basins have the potential to spiral out of control in an already volatile area. Primarily in question are the Euphrates, Tigris, and Jordan rivers. For example, the Jordan River runs along Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Israel, and Palestine. However, Israel has restricted Palestine's access to the river as part of their ongoing conflict. Those who control water can use it to their political advantage. Another popular example is that of Bolivia's privatization of water. In 2000, water rights in Cochabamba were given over to a private company, which proceeded to raise prices significantly. This caused protests and eventually riots, during which a civilian was killed. Eventually, the privatization was reversed. Water availability might be one of the most conflict-prone issues the world has to deal with, especially as populations continue to grow while the amount of water continues to drop. Water shortages affect businesses, economies, and populations, and no country is immune to the effects of running out of water. Unfortunately, this complicated issue has no obvious solution outside of cooperation and compromise. One reason that borders and rights are so complex is because of the value of the large bodies of water beneath them. To learn about the science of aquifers and how they were formed, check out this video from D-News.
Okay, so that video shows you some current conflicts going on in the Middle East, in particular between Israel and Palestine, fighting over water resources, such as a river there. All right, again, I'll link that video if you cannot hear it clearly enough. But I want you all to think about this as well. So what did the COVID-19 shutdown teach you about what can happen in a society? Because I can tell you from working in the casino for 10 years, everybody always told us, oh, there's no way they'd ever shut this place down. It's too much of a, there's too much money to be made in tourism, this and that. And one night I was dealing roulette at the casino, and guess what? Due to COVID-19, they shut the casino down. In fact, all of them shut down. The whole city shut down. I'm sure you guys aren't going to think as much about that because you already lived through it when you were younger, but trust me when I say that that's something we never thought would happen. So what does the COVID-19 shutdown teach you about what can happen in a society? All right. So that was a virus, which it is sad and unfortunate that some people have passed from it. However, a lot more people have lived by getting that virus, and that is something that can be dealt with via vaccinations, medications, health, and mask. Okay, so there are different ways to deal with that virus, but how would running out of water be different? Okay, think of it this way. Again, it's sad and unfortunate that some people have passed from COVID-19. However, more people have gotten COVID-19 and lived through it. However, on the flip side, how many humans can live without water? All right. So looking at those two, just think about how those differences would add up. All right. So when you are looking at issues like this, I want you all to remember that here in physical science, we base things on science. Science is about what you can prove, not what you believe. Okay, so we're looking at science-based solution. We're not looking at politics. Okay, so politics is not something that we partake in here. It is all science, and it is all based on the logic of science. All right. So what has happened to the Colorado snowpack as the climate has warmed significantly? Well, despite a lot of snowpack here and there, the mountain snowpack, unfortunately, has continued to get less and less every year as the climate has warmed, okay? So, being as the snowpack in the Rocky Mountains is what supplies the water to the Colorado River, what do you think will happen to our water supply from the Colorado River as the snowpack becomes less and less every year? Okay, so how would you see this playing out in the future based on current science data? Okay, so in our philosophy that we use in our room here of not playing the victim in any portion of our life, what can we do in response to the current situation? Remember what we learned. You can't choose everything that life throws at you. You can't choose how other people behave, but you can always choose how you respond. And we are not going to play the victim. We're going to choose how we respond, okay? So how can we as a community respond to this current situation, all right? You can see that one thing that has been enacted recently is that the city has banned what they call useless grass, basically just grass that serves no practical function. So that is one way that they are trying to conserve water. Something else that could happen potentially, a lot of HOAs, any of you who have a house now or in the future will learn about the joys of living in an HOA community. But there are many plants and other things that are enforced by HOAs in various landscaping. However, if you were to take, say, palm trees like this that require a lot of water and replace them with native vegetation such as Mojave yucca trees or something like this, Mojave yuccas do not require any water from humans, okay? They live naturally here in the desert, whereas these palm trees require a lot of water. So if you, again, it's in the long run, it's not going to be so much about what you believe it looks nice. It's going to be about what you can prove can actually save water, okay? So if you want some plants, you could potentially get rid of all these palm trees, replace them with native vegetation, and you would save a lot of water consumption there, okay? So that's something that, like, we as a community could do. Now, how can you as an individual prepare for this? All right, so one thing I want to emphasize to a lot of you, and again, this is just something I have kind of learned the hard way myself from moving around in different places. It always helps if you have a trade or career that allows you to trade, career, education, something that allows you to move around if needed, okay? If you have training in different job fields, that helps as well. An example would be like if you work as an auto mechanic. All right, that is a job that you can have anywhere, okay? Another example would be pretty much anything in the medical field, okay? If you're someone who is a certified auto mechanic and you are also, say, a certified or a registered nurse, I mean, you will always have a job and you can live anywhere, all right? And the reason I say that is because, as you guys know, I worked as a casino dealer for a while, and while it was a great job at times, and I loved it. It was also something that when I moved to other cities, particular ones where they did not have a casino, it was a useless skill, okay? That's why I encourage you all to get a trade, career, or education, something that is universal that you can use kind of anywhere, okay? Something that's always in demand. All right, whether it is a college degree, college education, or a trade education, get something that is universal that can be used anywhere. That way, if you do have to move out of a particular region because of natural disaster or a water shortage, you can move somewhere else and have a job lined up. All right. So another good thing to do is research and travel to different cities in the case that you need to relocate. All right. So these are two places. On the bottom left, you have Tampa, Florida. On the bottom right, you have Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, so those are two cities that, as you can see, Cincinnati's on a river, has a good water supply. Tampa, I believe, has a river that comes down through the middle, but being as it's in Florida, there is a lot of fresh water supply there. Plus, Tampa also has a desalination plant already to supply fresh water from the ocean water. Okay, so again, if I were you, I'd say get a good trade, job, career, college education, whatever you can to get you a job that you can do anywhere, okay? Not just something that is city specific, like say being a casino dealer. Again, nothing wrong with that. I did it myself forever. It's just harder to get a job in certain areas if you only have that one specific skill. All right, and then familiarize yourself with a couple of other cities that you could move to in the case that you did have to relocate. All right, so what can you do to take responsibility, not play the victim, and be prepared in the case that we do have some sort of water shortage or some sort of natural disaster that knocks out the water supply here? For instance, a large earthquake would most likely shut off the water supply here for a good bit, okay? So one thing is you can simply get some of these large water storage containers instead of just buying the generic plastic gallons of water at the store, which there's nothing wrong with that, but this is a lot more practical for storage. As you can see, this contains 7 gallons of water. Remember, you want 1 gallon of water per person per day. All right, you want, I'd say, at least like a 2-week supply or something like that, okay? But you can get some storage containers like this. I know you're like, dude, that thing's $18. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but you know, buy 4 or 5 of them, put some water in them, store it in the garage or somewhere. It'll last you forever in case you need it. All right. Next thing, get some sort of water filtration system. Okay, some sort of camping water filtration system. Why do you need that? I will show you here in just a second. Okay. Next thing, and this is something that I know you guys are going to think it's gross, but it is something that it is better if you know it than not know it, okay? If the water supply ever goes out, nature is still going to call you, okay? Nature is going to call you at some point. You're going to need to do your business, okay? If the water supply goes out and there is no water in the toilet, a good 5-gallon bucket and some trash bags will go a long way, okay? I know it sounds gross and non-fun, and it isn't a lot of fun. However, it will get you through some times when there is no water available. Now, as far as cleaning yourself up after nature's call, if you don't have some TP, baby wipes, they are moisturized, they go a long way. So get yourself a 5-gallon bucket, a big roll of trash bags, thick trash bags, and a couple of things of baby wipes. You're all set up, okay? So that is a good emergency sanitation solution in case there's ever an earthquake that knocks out the water or we have a water shortage where they just shut the water off, okay? So where this camping filtration system comes in, there are actually a lot of natural water sources in the mountain areas and, of course, the Colorado River. In case you ever needed to get water if the water was shut off at the tap, you could use your storage gallons and go to a natural water source. For instance, this is Calico Tanks up in Red Rock Canyon. Get some water, take it back home, and filter it with your camping filter, and there you go. Ta-da! Some water. Of course, you do realize that everybody else is also going to be going to get this water, okay? That's why it helps if you have some stored at home. Okay, but anyway, so there is some ways, some practical steps that you can take to be a little more prepared and self-responsible and not play the victim in the case that there is a water shortage or the water gets knocked out due to a natural disaster. All right. So what are some possible long-term solutions to this issue for Las Vegas? All right. One of them, as they mentioned in the previous video, was a pipeline from the Great Lakes. That is one of our freshwater resources we have here in the U.S. that we are very blessed to have. Another one is going to be mentioned right here, and there was one more where they said a pipeline from Central Nevada, but we're going to concentrate on this one.
Maybe you've heard that California has been having some water trouble lately. And by lately, I mean for the past 5 years. California is experiencing a serious drought, and if it continues, it could cause permanent damage to its ecosystems, threaten its precious freshwater resources, and ruin the state's many crops. But maybe you're thinking, how can a state that shares 1,350 kilometers of coastline with an ocean be out of water? Well, ocean water is full of salt, that's how. But it doesn't have to stay that way, because there's a process called desalination, which removes the salt from the seawater to make it drinkable. It's already used in some parts of the world on a large scale, so now both scientists and citizens are wondering whether desal, as it's sometimes called, can help California out of its drought. So let's take a look at how desalination currently works. There are 5 different methods used in facilities around the world to extract pure water from seawater. But over 80% of the world's desalinated water is produced by just 2 of these methods. They are known as reverse osmosis and multi-stage flash. Reverse osmosis uses pressure to remove salt, other minerals, and microbes from seawater. The water is pumped through a bunch of semi-permeable membranes, which contain tiny pores that let water molecules pass through, but filter out other particles if they're too big or charged. The water that gets forced through the membranes becomes usable freshwater. But the leftover water is just so salty and full of other junk that it's too expensive to extract any more freshwater, so it's sent off to a separate treatment plant. This extremely salt-saturated water is known as concentrate, or brine. In a multi-stage flash, seawater is brought to a boil multiple times as it travels through a series of chambers, creating some water vapor and leaving the dissolved salts in a liquid. Fresh water is collected as the water vapor rises to the top of these chambers and condenses. Then the leftover brine is either recycled in other parts of the system or disposed of somehow. These technologies have been effectively used in thirsty countries around the world. For example, the Ras Al Khair desalination plant in Saudi Arabia uses both reverse osmosis and multi-stage flash processes. It's capable of pumping out about 1 million cubic meters of desalinated water every day. In Israel, meanwhile, Sarek desalination plant uses reverse osmosis exclusively and can supply around 620,000 cubic meters of fresh water per day to the country's water system. So why don't we use this stuff to solve California's drought problems? Well, even the biggest desal plants in the world are only supplemental. They don't make enough water to support an entire population. The Carlsbad desalination plant in California, for instance, is helping produce fresh water through reverse osmosis, but at best, it provides less than 10% of regional water demand. Desalinating seawater can also be twice as expensive as treating other water sources like rainwater or wastewater. On a large scale, most of that expense comes from the energy that's needed to heat the water or apply pressure to it. According to some estimates, it takes about $25,000 US worth of electricity per month to produce enough desal water for only 1,200 homes. Plus, there's the problem of how to process all that leftover brine. You can't just dump it back into the ocean because the extreme levels of salt have been shown to damage fish, coral, and seagrass. Finally, there are logistics to consider. Most of California's water is used for agriculture, but the state's groves would be largely unaffected by any effort to desalinate seawater. Why? Because most California farms are inland, not even close to the ocean, which is generally where you'd want to put a desalination plant. So, to help quench California's thirst, we're going to have to try new desal technologies. One promising technique scientists are developing in California is solar desalination, which harnesses the thermal energy of the sun to power a desalination plant. An example of this would be a multiple effect distillation plant, which is a lot like multi-stage flash, except the steam from the first stage is used to boil water in the second stage, and the steam from the second stage is used to boil water in the third stage, and so on. Solar desal may be able to make clean water at lower cost than conventional desal, and it could produce less brine. Some companies even estimate around 93% of the salt water being turned into fresh water. For now, though, the cost and logistical problems of desalinating seawater are just too big to solve problems like the California drought. But with more research and ingenuity, desal plants could provide at least some relief to drought-stricken communities everywhere. Thanks for watching this episode of
Okay, so hopefully you see how desalination could provide a long-term solution. The idea was to build a pipeline from Los Angeles up here to Las Vegas and supply fresh water. Okay. All right, so what are some resources the U.S. has that we could use? Well, if you're looking at the United States, look right here. You see the Great Lakes? They are one of the largest reservoirs of fresh water on the planet. All right, so again, I want you guys to think about this. You wake up tomorrow, you go to brush your teeth, no water comes out of the tap. Your family or guardian, whoever you live with, tells you the water isn't working and that the news says, hey, guess what? We ran out of water. Sorry, nobody told you. We didn't want you to panic. So what would you do? Are you prepared? And what will you do moving forward? Okay? Because they're like, hey, we don't know when it's coming back on. All right, so I want you guys to think about that, plan and prepare for that scenario. Again, in this class, we learn earth science, geoscience, whichever one you want to call it, but I also try to teach you what, in my view and my experience, are some practical survival skills and life skills that you could use in the future. Hopefully you'll never have to use them, but I would rather you know them and not need them than need them and not have them, okay? So thank you for watching this video. You should now have all the answers you need to answer this quiz, Las Vegas water shortage and survival. Thank you very much, and have a good day.